guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Emma and today I'm going to be recommending you guys books to read if you want to get into fantasy. I know fantasy is such an intimidating genre. Believe me, when I was first getting into reading I steered clear of fantasy simply because it's just so difficult to get into, and there's so many different types of fantasy, like epic fantasy, urban fantasy, any type of fantasy, it's all there. And it's just so hard to know which genre you want to get into. Most of them are YA. I mainly read YA. I actually don't think I've ever read an adult fantasy book. I'm not going to sit here and give you the obvious choices, which I mean, I'll tell you them if you want to know. Harry Potter and Percy Jackson. Percy Jackson is middle grade, Harry Potter middle grade to young adult fantasy, past like the third book kind of. The books I'm going to be recommending today are books that, not necessarily that I loved, but books that are just like a good introduction to like a fantasy setting. Without further ado, and without me blabbering on, let's get started. So the first one I wanted to recommend is actually a series. It is obviously the Shadowhunters series. I don't have City of Heavenly Fire or City of Glass. No, City of the first one. Yeah, I don't have the first one here, but my covers, oh my god, are they not gorgeous? So sorry, any Shadowhunters fans, like look at those gorgeous covers. I don't have them even in order. I read these books when I was in, I would say second and third year. These books are pretty good. They're not like fantastic, like they're not the most fantastic fantasy books I've ever read in my entire life. The Shadowhunter realm, this is the Mortal Instruments series, starts off with our main character Clary, who is, or has thought she was immortal her whole life until she finds out that she's actually Shadowhunter, which are basically demon hunters, and they train in an academy, and she meets all these shadow hunters and she enters the world, and then there's like obviously like a bad guy going on trying to figure out all that stuff. It is a really good starting place for fantasy, so I would take these with a grain of salt, but the Infernal Devices, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Go read them if you want. Then the next book I want to read, I've only read the first book in the series, but the second book only recently came out, so you know, don't judge me. If you've watched any of my wrap books, you know that I didn't really enjoy this book. Like, it wasn't a love of my life book, but it was a really clear world building, really clear character development. Everything in this book was very clear. There was no like ambiguity. I read a lot of books and I still can't say a lot of words. It's okay. But basically there wasn't a lot of ambiguity, there wasn't a lot of guessing, there wasn't a lot of, wait, what was it again? And like flipping back. It's all very clear, very, you know. This story is about a world where magic has been taken away from the people who wield it because they were too powerful and the king feared them, and it is about a girl who's on a journey. If you like journey books, perfect. She's on a journey to restore magic, and obviously there's obstacles, etc, etc, but now this next trilogy, you're gonna think I hate these books. I don't hate any of these books, but they're just not like top tier intense level fantasy. Also, I'm wearing my Twilight shirt in case y'all were wondering. Love it. But the books I'm recommending, you know, they are good books and they are such a good introduction to fantasy, and I still recommend them. Do you need to buy them necessarily to add to your collection? Maybe not. But anyway, the next series, it's more of a trilogy. It is the Shadow and Bone trilogy. The second book, goodbye. Absolutely hated that. I hated it. The first book, Shadow and Bone, pretty good. You know, pretty good. It's basically about a girl. Wait a second. These books are getting turned into a TV. Oh, there was a crow just came really close to my window there. These books are getting turned in to a TV show along with Six of Crows, which if you've watched any of my videos, you know that I love Six of Crows. But basically, if you want to get into this before the TV show gets released in April. So this is a series about a girl named Zelina. She's a map maker in the army, and then one day she realizes she has these like insane powers. Power is that she can summon a light, and there hasn't been anyone like her in recent memory. And she is recruited by the Darkling, who can summon darkness, to help defeat a thing called the Shadowfold. And it basically just goes, I just spit on my book. Anyway, it basically just follows them while they go through that, you know. It's such a good introduction to fantasy yet again. It is simple, the world is easy to follow, and it's short. They're all short. They're all like under 400 pages or just over 400 pages, so they're not too long, and you can get through them quite quickly. And considering there's a TV show coming out, You want to get on that. Another book that I don't have with me, but before I forget about it, is Legendborn. If I'm going to talk about a book that I freaking love, I'm going to talk about Legendborn. Legendborn is such a good introduction fantasy. First of all, it's urban fantasy. Urban fantasy is always a great stepping stone into fantasy. You know, that's not real fantasy, of course it is, but it also incorporates the real world. And you know, like how, say in like Harry Potter, you have the real, like the Muggle world, and then you have the Wizarding world, and like you're able to like kind of understand it more because Harry's coming from the Muggle world. That's basically what happens in Legendborn and also in the Shadowhunters series. Rather than being just told, I hate when you're just told in a story like you're an idiot about things. You're shown things. I love that. It is a retelling of King Arthur and his story and like about his round table and his knights and everything. But it's all about so much more. There's so much more. I just loved it so much. I don't have it with me. I've lent it to my cousin. But you should totally check it out. And the last book I'm going to recommend for getting into fantasy is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It is based in Shanghai in the 1920s. You can guess from the quote, These Violent Delights, it is a Romeo and Juliet retelling. So there's 2 different gangs, and we're based on our character Juliet. She is a badass. A lot of these tabs are literally just me being like, when Juliet was badass. That's literally it. That is literally it. I loved her. Roma, who is Romeo, obviously Roma is in the opposite gang. They were in love, and then she got sent back to America, and then she comes back, and there's like this disease kind of terrorizing her city, and she's like, I need to save my city to figure out what's going on. And so she teams up with Roma and his friends, and they are trying to discover what the hell is going on in Shanghai. Because it's based on Romeo and Juliet, the story isn't too much. Like, it's nothing like, whoa, that's so much to take in. Writing isn't too complicated. There's nothing like too flowery. Like, none of these books have too flowery language where you're like, can you just tell me what's happening? None of that stuff. It is just fantastic. I really enjoyed this book. So they were all my recommendations for books to read to get you into fantasy. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you've read any of these books and if you have any other recommendations, and I will see you next time. Thank you. Bye.